Pace is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's December 12th. It is a Thursday, which means we are taking your Thursday thoughts on whatever you like. There's a few things on the board so far. We'll be getting into Charlotte here in just a minute as progress has been made on the MLS bid in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll get into that here in a bit. We'll also get into some of the player movement around MLS. We have players who are re-signing. We have players who are potentially coming. We have players who might not be coming. We'll get into all of that as well, along with all of your questions and thoughts on a Thursday. John, let's start with Charlotte, and let's start with some of the updates here. According to Joe Bruno at WSOC9, who's been all over this from day one, the city has agreed to the $110 million that was requested. Mayor Vi Lyles has written a letter inviting Don Garber to the big event, and it looks like there's going to be an announcement next week.
And in our timeline, we are seeing some of that. And I'm just going to go straight to the question from Chris Ashley, who's helped us out with the Greenville Triumph material all season long. He says, I'm driving up to Charlotte on Tuesday for a, quote, end quote, secret party I've been invited to. His hashtag overreaction / Thursday thoughts dilemma is what an Atlanta United fan from day one living in South Carolina to do with an MLS team coming to the Carolinas. I feel conflicted, need some SDH therapy.
There's really nothing to tell you. I mean, honestly, it's how you feel. I'm not one of these people who's going to sit here and lecture people on how to feel, you know? I mean, there wasn't a team before. Now there is a team. So it's going to be an individual thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of supporters, a lot of fans who will continue with the team that they've continued with. Others will support their hometown team, and others will kind of have a place in their heart for both, to be honest. And, yeah, it can get complicated in a situation like this. But there's no right or wrong. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It is what it is. It's a great thing for the game. It's a great thing for future generations, and that's the number one element here that I keep looking at is this is a big step in the right direction for soccer in the South because it's another major area that will have a professional, setting for players to aspire to live in, kids who are going to the academy. All that stuff. I mean, it's a good thing in the whole. Yes, there are going to be some interesting situations that arise, and Chris is one. But Chris is also somebody who, we've talked about it on shows before, having two teams in Greenville and being able to balance the difference. Now, they're at different levels, which complicates it. It's one thing to be a supporter of a lower division team and a MLS team. This is a little more complicated because it's two teams at the same level who are probably going to be rivals. And, yeah, Chris Ashley might end up having the split Charlotte-Atlanta shirt. I don't want to make light of it.
No,
yeah, it's a conflicted situation. But the biggest thing I would tell people in this, and there's others, don't let anybody lecture you or bully you into feeling the way you feel. You might not know until players start getting signed. You might not know until you're at Charlotte's first match. You might not know until then, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be what others tell you. It doesn't have to be what it is in other countries. Everything is new here. The game is new here. Everybody is kind of feeling this as you go. Just go on your gut feeling.
So that was part of the discussions that popped up on the timeline this morning. And I also will give a friend of the show, Nipun Chopra, credit for an oversight when it comes to possible team names. He said that if no one has considered Charlotte Flair, it is definitely an oversight on all of our parts.
No, not an oversight. Not an oversight at all. That's bad. Anyway, it looks like some updates on Charlotte, just for those of you who might be coming new to this story. The $110 million in hospitality funds, a similar, I don't know all of the details here, but it's a similar type of setup that Mercedes-Benz Stadium had, where money was coming from tourism as opposed to local taxes. I know it's still taxes, but it is a different source of where this money's coming from. It's $110 million from the hospitality funds for over a period of years for Charlotte's MLS franchise and modifications to Bank of America Stadium. I think that's the majority of this, is to make the stadium MLS ready and MLS compliant. In Bruno's report over at WSOC TV, he says, additionally, the franchise will locate its headquarters and practice facilities on the Eastland Mall site. In closed session in November, the city council members agreed to the deal, and it had to be formally approved by the city council in a public meeting at a later date. So this has been moving along quickly. David Tepper has been very aggressive in making it happen, and a couple of the other things that Mayor Lyles mentioned is that, you know, this franchise, this new club, is going to include, quote, significant and meaningful community benefits that will connect this new franchise with our residents across Charlotte and lift up youth sports in our communities and schools. Lyles also told Garber that the city will, quote, work to build out an entertainment district connecting Charlotte's Center City and our Gateway District. So this secret, not so secret, but kind of secret, but not really secret, event is going to be on December 17th. Invitations have been sent out, and Chris Ashley's got one. Others will get one. A press conference and party have been planned. Tom Glick is the president of the Carolina Panthers. He has said that the name, colors, crest will involve heavy input from fans. We talked about it yesterday. DT Soccer, David Tepper Soccer, has applied for trademarks to 8 potential team names. I don't think they're limited to these, but these are what's out there first. Charlotte FC, Charlotte Crown FC, Charlotte Fortune FC, Charlotte Monarchs FC, Charlotte Athletic FC, Charlotte Town FC, Carolina Gliders FC, and All Carolina FC. The applicant on those trademark documents is the vice president and general counsel for the Panthers, so it's legit. I thought Jason Davis and Emily Olson on United States of Soccer on SiriusXM FC yesterday had a good point. You know, a lot of times you see when these types of things get filed, you see a lot of similarities. Like you would see, for example, Charlotte Monarchs FC and Charlotte Monarchs SC and Monarch Charlotte FC, like variations of the same thing. That's not the case here. These are all very different. Like, you're not trying to protect, okay, we know what we're going to do, and we're trying to protect everything around it so somebody doesn't grab a similar trademark.
Right.
These are all over the place. And I wonder, and this is what I think Jason speculated to yesterday, is it a little bit of a fishing expedition to see what the reaction is from people?
Yeah.
If there's anything that grabs people's attention, it starts to get some buzz that, you know, social media grabs onto, if the supporters grab onto. I haven't noticed anything get like more traction than anything else just yet, but give it a little bit of time. It's hard. Branding and all this stuff is hard. It's easy to sit back and poke holes at it, and that's what I think we're all really good at doing these days, is just, you know, looking at this stuff like, oh, that's dumb, turning into Beavis and Butthead about it. But coming up with a good brand is not easy, and especially when you don't, you know, have players, you don't have an identity, you don't have anything yet to build it around. But you also see the flip side. How many people criticized Atlanta United as a brand, like, oh, there's nothing there, it's bland, blah, 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 and now could you imagine it as anything else? No, because you've been able to put tangible things to it and build it out. So whatever Charlotte goes with, I'm not worried about it. My guess is the colors would be in the same general palette as the Panthers, which is fine. Like, you know, what is it, like an electric blue? Is that a fair representation of the Panthers blue?
Yeah, electric blue with or teal, depending on.
No, it's not teal. Teal is
That's
Miami.
right. The Jaguars are teal.
Yeah, teal is like Miami, Jacksonville. This is blue.
Black
It's
and
not
blue.
Carolina blue. It's
No.
not that much of a light blue. It's a kind of unique shade of blue. It's not royal blue. It's in between like Carolina blue and royal blue.
But I like the electric blue reference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's distinctive. It works, and you get the black, you get the silver. Cool. It's not a crazy palette, but it has a little bit of uniqueness. Cool, go with it. I'm good with that. Just roll with that because it's something that works in that city. It works in that stadium, and that's a big part of it. You look at the blueprint that Atlanta United's created. It wouldn't have made sense in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the Falcons playing there as well to be an orange and teal team. It wouldn't have made any sense. So you have to have some similarities. As maybe the silver turned into something else or the black turned into something else. Sure, but I think generally that's what we're going to be talking about here. The modifications at Bank of America Stadium, a middle tunnel entrance to the field is one. Additional locker rooms is one. Garber had mentioned, I think, wanting a little more information or understanding of how they're going to size the stadium. It's not set up in the same way as some other venues that are built with soccer in mind and football in mind. It is pretty much, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, pretty much like two bowls. It's a lower bowl and an upper bowl.
Yeah.
There's not much of a middle level. No,
that's straight up two sections that mid-levels kind of got some suites in the press area and all that kind of stuff. So it's your stock stadium from 20 years ago.
Do we know what the lower bowl seats?
I will effort that information.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the exact sizing of everything. I wonder if you can just do it that way and then eventually, if things go well, as everybody's expecting, to open up sections in the upper level.
Yeah.
That's probably the simplest way, especially if the lower bowl seats in the 30,000 range, which I think so. Just looking at it, I think so.
Yeah.
The lower bowl, there is a divider. There's kind of a separate walk-through in the middle. So you have a 200 level that's not exactly like a different level, it looks like from pictures. So I think if you block off the upper level, you'll be good. And remember, long-term, Tepper is envisioning an idea of a Mercedes-Benz Stadium-like situation being built. But that's going to take a little bit of time. So in the short term, we've seen games at Bank of America Stadium. They look good. We've seen good crowds at Bank of America Stadium. Not too worried about that. It's a different conversation when you're going from special events to a day-to-day team. The number one thing that has made me feel good about this scenario, one, you've seen some organic support start to come up. I've followed people, and people have followed me who have been trying to get things off the ground. In Charlotte, there's a Mint City Collective, which has started to get some things going, but also the media. And I think that's the thing that's maybe the most similar to what's happened here in Atlanta is that local media has been all over this in a big way and treating it with importance, not treating it with, oh, what's David Tepper up to? It's really getting into this that, okay, this is a good thing for the city. This is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to function. That's a huge element to it. Now, we've seen it on the TV. We've seen it on newspaper. We've seen it in mainstream. I don't know in terms of your sports talk radio and those types of influencers, how that has gone. And that would be kind of the next step in the next conversation. But things are coming together. Now, questions that arise. Charlotte Independence. What happens? The county, I think it's Mecklenburg County, approved funding to renovate Memorial Stadium, which needed renovation, period. But a big part of that was the Charlotte Independence. They, even with the new ownership and the new push, haven't really connected very well. They haven't drawn very well. Now, they haven't been able to get into Memorial Stadium yet either, and that was the long-term vision. what happens with the independents? That's a very important question. Is there a way for them to become a USL Championship or USL League One affiliate of the Charlotte MLS team? I don't know. I don't know how the ownership feels. I don't know how that would go over. I don't know if that's the way forward. I don't know if that's it. I don't think that an MLS team and a USL Championship team that are completely separate in a city like Charlotte right now would be successful. But if the independents are okay with what they've been drawing, I don't think they dramatically drop because it's a pretty small base to begin with, a hardcore base that's very loyal. I think you would have maybe some of those people also go to MLS games, but I don't know if they would abandon the independents in large numbers. I just don't know what the long-term vision would be for the independents at that point.
With all of the renovations proposed to Memorial Stadium, the independence for me is the larger question, and what they would like to be as a part of the soccer footprint there in the Charlotte area. To answer your question about Bank of America Stadium, lower bowl club and suites, the 100 and the 200 level, 38-4 basically.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So you start with that, and hopefully you need more than that. But that's where you start. Last season, Charlotte Independents were 31st in the USL Championship in attendance. They averaged $17.50 per match. That was slightly up from 2018, where they averaged $15.52. That's what's difficult about this, and this is something that I don't love the situation that this is, but a lot of people I think would try to tell you that, well, you can't do an MLS team in Charlotte because there's already a team. But should a team that is only drawing 1,500, 1,700 lock everything out of the city? Is that good for the game? I don't think it is. But I want to see how this gets handled because, the independents have tried to take steps forward and worked to doing that, and they've had to bounce around a little bit. And it's been a complicated situation, first with the original bid that was put in Charlotte for MLS that didn't involve the independents at all. This one didn't either. That first one got some attention and kind of muddied the waters a little bit. The independents have had to battle because that original bid was looking at Memorial Stadium. And that's, I think, one of the things you have to look at when you look at the big picture here with Charlotte. You had an original MLS bid that was by Speedway folks, right? NASCAR type of folks, yep. Facilities types of folks, not team sports kind of people. And they were looking at a renovated Memorial Stadium that would have been a small venue and would have been very limited in what it could do. And now you're looking at something entirely different. And I think you're looking at something that is more reflective of where MLS is today. I think it's a better situation. I think everything did work out for the best in all this regard. The question is the independence and how you manage that. And if there is a way, and I don't know if the independence ownership is willing, but if there is a way to involve them in this, that would be great. I would hope that it's possible. And if you're renovating Memorial Stadium and that becomes a secondary venue, you're in good shape. You've got a spot for your second team, your reserve team, big academy games, all kinds of different things. And I think you can deepen that connection to the city. But that's probably the trickiest element of all of this. That and just breaking through the noise in a growing sports city that has the NFL and has the NBA. And we're going to take a quick break on that note. So hang out with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, December 12th, Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. We've had some thoughts on Charlotte and the impending secret, not so secret announcement / event / thing next week that will see Charlotte become team number 30 in MLS and the team that is coming in 2021 alongside Austin FC. Our correspondent on the ground in the Carolinas, Chris Ashley, has some rumblings, and this is all rumor and innuendo. It's not confirmed.
It's rumblings.
And Chris does not refer to it as anything remotely near confirmed. But he's heard some rumblings that the Independents could be looking to transition to the NWSL. That's a brilliant move. That's a very interesting pivot that makes a whole lot of sense. And that would be a way, I do think, that would make it very comfortable to work together with David Tepper and his group without anybody stepping on any toes. That would be a nice compliment. And that would be a nice compliment to what, the Independents have built, but also what David Tepper can do and add to the game in the city. It makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's a perfect move. It is the ideal way to handle it. I wish I had thought of it. So I hope that's the route that happens, and that makes a lot of sense. So we'll see. I just think it's hard, and I hate it for Independence fans. I hate it for people who have really put their blood, sweat, and tears into that. But it's hard to... It's hard looking at it from the outside without that emotional attachment to say that this is a bad thing because of what David Tepper can do for the game that the Independence ownership just can't. And it's kicking it to a whole nother level. And I know people don't like to hear about money and business and how it's important in a game that we love, but it is. It's vital. It's the lifeblood of it. And it's a huge part, and you can't underestimate it. You can't. I'm excited to see where this goes, and I'm excited to see how Charlotte builds, and they're going to have to do it quickly. And I don't think they've been sitting around twiddling their thumbs. I think that, the reporting that's out there, that they've already started, talking and thinking about sports personnel, about academy stuff. They've already started to have things ready. And David Tepper, from all appearances and everything he's said and done so far in charge of the Panthers, he's not going to sit back and be meek about building this team. He is going to be aggressive and bold and want it to be a winner as quickly as possible. So that should be exciting for soccer fans in the area. And honestly, I think it's exciting for Atlanta United fans because it's another team that comes into the league with a lot of ambition. And the more teams with ambition in this league, the more owners that are committed, as Arthur Blank told everyone last year at the All-Star game, we need owners that are committed. It's not saying they have to spend all the same amount of money. It's not saying that they have to be loaded and rich. It's saying they have to be committed. And Arthur has shown that commitment emotionally and financially. I think David Tepper has definitely committed to it on the financial end, and it appears that he will be one of those emotionally invested owners that's going to push the league forward.
And you have this in the footprint here in the Southeast, where you have owners who aren't messing around. And we've continued to, ever since the show started, it's about the growth of the sport, and then the growth of the sport here in the Southeast. And you're seeing owners who are engaged, owners who want to succeed, owners who are treating it as a business, but at the same time, they're understanding the impact that can happen on multiple fronts and multiple dimensions here. But you have an owner in David Tepper who came screaming from the back and is like, okay, here's the deal. Here's all of my evidence that I should have a franchise in MLS. MLS is like, all right. They see the investment. They see how engaged he is. They see how serious he is. They see what he wants to do with this Charlotte franchise. And next week, when allegedly this quote-unquote secret party happens, we'll get that next stage in that. And it's another owner who is added to the stacks of Major League Soccer, who understands what Major League Soccer can be, both as an investment and as an element in a business portfolio, but understands also the growth of the sport and where it can be. So you've got another guy who's come from the back of the pack and was interested and has completely and totally put the accelerator down and has shown it's like, all right, I'm serious, let's go. He's not messing around.
Yeah, I mean, Tepper bought the Panthers, and that's really where this accelerated. So, I mean, it's a little bit different situation than some of the others that, have felt like they've come out of nowhere. Nashville kind of felt like they came out of nowhere a little bit, and they strengthened their ownership group and were really aggressive because they thought their best opportunity was to get in when they did and not wait when things go up in terms of price point and in terms of interest. This one's a little different in that, when did Tepper buy the Panthers?
It was only a couple of years ago, because the second that he came in, he mention at his purchase press conference when he bought it from Jerry Richardson that he was interested. I mean, that's all that's true. I was just trying to get to, he bought the Panthers in 2018, May of 2018, and he had you're
been
faster than I am.
A part owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers before that. But May of 2018, because of that part ownership, it was able to be moved through the NFL very quickly because he was already part of the clique. So he came in with things in mind, and some of it, hey, Jerry Richardson ran into some trouble, a little bit of trouble, and was forced to divest very quickly of his ownership in the Panthers, and Tepper pounced on it, but also when he did, saw that opportunity to add soccer to the portfolio. And this was, at least a year after the Charlotte bid had been pretty much kaput with the Speedway organization and Memorial Stadium and funding, and they were trying to put together a coalition with the county and the city balked. Well, the city's on board now with this setup, and it's a very different setup, and I totally understand the difference between the two, and I think, all things considered, this will be more successful in the current format than it would have been with that format. So it was the right move. It was the right move to have all this fall into place, and it kind of did fall into place in a lot of ways. We'll talk more about Charlotte. We'll get more into it as more news pops up, so stay tuned. We will be all over the Charlotte event / secret party next Tuesday as we get closer to it. Let's talk about some other news this morning around the league. The big one is a few minutes ago, Toronto FC announced that they had re-signed Michael Bradley, their captain, the general, on a TAM deal. So now they've got an open designated player spot. You've got to, whatever you think about Michael Bradley, and I know Nick is throwing things at his listening device right now, and there are plenty of others who have started booing because his name came up. You got to give the guy a ton of credit for coming back to Toronto, staying in the city, staying with the club, and taking less money to do so.
No doubt. I mean, he understands what can go down and how he can be a part of it, but at the same time, knowing that you're on the back nine and being able to bring in other folks who can assist to get Toronto back to where they were, and understanding that there are different ways that you can participate and help things out financially, this being the number one part of it. When I heard that it was a TAM deal, I'm like, okay. And sitting there, obviously nodding my head and pursing my lips doesn't translate to radio, but you have someone who understands how pieces fit together in assembling a roster where you can bring in other players who are younger and can do other things to help things out. So no, it's good on Bradley and good on Toronto for making this go down.
Well, it opens up one significant spot. It opens up a designated player spot. It's really not about much more than that. You're able to add another top player, a top impactful player. And Michael Bradley was impactful for Toronto last year. And I think he will continue to do so, although that will wane over time as he gets older. The rumors had been this would be a TAM deal most of the way through. It's not a whole lot of news that that's the case. It's exciting for Toronto fans that they get it done in this way, because now you start to look at, okay, what are you going to do now with that spot? What are you going to do that you couldn't do before? They've talked about the attack, but I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to go add another designated player attacker unless you're going to commit to playing 3-5-2 on the regular. And if you are, then you need somebody who can pair up with Josie Altidore and gives you that type of player. It's possible. It is, but I don't know. I think it's more of an attacking winger who could give you a guy who could play up top, but somebody who predominantly can be dangerous out wide on the opposite side of Pozuelo. I think if you're Toronto FC and you're Greg Vanney and you're looking forward at this team, you've got Omar Gonzalez, you've got Chris Mavinga, you've got Eric Zavaleta, Laurent Simon. Center back, you can go 3 comfortably. You might want to add one more for depth. Okay. Wing back, you've got Justin Morrow. You've got Richie Larea, who is turning into one of the better wing backs in the league. You've got Auro as well. You're set. You're good at outside back. You're good at wing back. Your midfield, the core, it's going to be Bradley. It's going to be Osorio. It's going to be Delgado. Along with that, you've got Nick De Leon, who is a Swiss Army knife, can play anywhere. You've got Tsubasa Endo, who can play up top, who can play out wide, really came on as the year went on. You've got the understudy for Bradley and Liam Frazier, who I think we'll start to see easing into more time and more time and more time. Pozuelo, I think what we saw as the year went on was that he was more comfortable in a wide position. So having that trio in the midfield of Bradley, Osorio, Delgado, with Pozuelo on one side, designated player on the other, and Altidore up top, that's a cup contender. That's an MLS Cup contender if you get the right designated player winger. And they tried it, with Benazet, who was good. He was on loan. They haven't completely ruled out him coming back, but now you've got the door open to go even bigger. And I think that's where they go. I think it's a winger who gives you the opportunity, because as we just went through that 3-5-2, if you're playing against an opponent, we've seen Greg Vanney shift his shape around quite a bit. If you're playing up against an opponent that you want to change it, you can go 4-4-2 diamond very easily. Bring Pozuelo in, have him at the point of the diamond, have Bradley at the base. You've got Delgado and Osorio as the 2 box-to-box players in that. And that winger that you're adding can come in and play as a forward with Josie Altidore. That's the kind of player that would put Toronto over the top and make them a cup contender. I think that's where they go in the market.
There's been talk of the shiny object of somebody like Mario Balotelli. That doesn't make any sense.
No, and Christian Jack in Toronto said that there was nothing to that. So I'm going to follow what the local reporter, who is very well tied in, is saying more than some random person, I think, in Europe.
Then let me quickly, since I brought Balotelli up, is there a place here in this league that would make sense?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of teams that need a top striker. Vancouver's one, although it looks like they're going to get Lucas Cavallini. You go through Kansas City, no, not now. Seattle, no. San Jose, no. Real Salt Lake, yes. Would he go to Utah? That'd be an interesting one.
Yes.
Portland, yes. Portland, really yes. Philadelphia, no, I don't think so. Orlando looks like they're going to get Cano instead. Red Bulls, I don't think he fits the profile of what they want. New York City, no. New England, no. Nashville, not really, because they've got so many forwards, although they need a big name. I don't think he fits the profile what they're trying to do either. Montreal, yes.
Yes.
Minnesota, yep. Miami, yep. LAFC, no. Galaxy, yep. Houston, no. Dallas, no, because he doesn't fit what they want to do. DC, probably not, because they have Ola Kamara, but I could see DC if it became an option going for it. Columbus, no. Colorado, no. Cincinnati, yes. That would be interesting, but I don't know if they could pull that one off. Chicago, yes, absolutely. So, 8, 9 teams for sure. There's plenty of spots he could land. I don't know why Toronto became this whole thing about like, oh, that's the best spot and the only spot. No, they had Josie Altidore, and they didn't really play a ton of two up top anyway. So, okay.
No, I think it was if Josie was brought back, then
Josie's
do you
back.
bring in
Josie's
Balotelli?
back? No. That's the thing. Like, we've got to pay attention in these rumors, and this is what I try to stress. And yeah, I like try to hammer these points home. Josie was re-signed a long time ago. Like, that was nothing. There was no if Josie comes back. Now, could you make a move and then sell Josie Altidore? Sure. But are you going to risk not being able to find the right sale and not getting your investment back and not having it make sense? Probably not. Not when you can sign a different kind of player that makes more sense for you. So people were going with the if Josie comes back. Like, he agreed to a new deal a long time ago. That's been out there. It's something that I really hope gets a little bit better. And this is, we've talked about it many times. Without a leading national voice, or voices ideally, where it's not one, that is driving the stuff home. Like, you don't see that type of confusion in the NBA market. You don't see that type of confusion in baseball and the NFL about how long is a player under contract and is a player coming back. Like, you don't see that. And we get sidetracked with if Josie Altidore's coming back. They announced a deal with him, I want to say it was in July. It was way back in the summer. No, it was February. They agreed to new terms and a contract through 2022, and these were the reports. Now, I'll have to look back and see when it was made official. But Christian Jack reported it on February 26th. So that's been done a long time ago. Balotelli would be a great fit for this league in a lot of different spots. And for me, it's Montreal. And I think Thierry Henry being his manager would be a good thing. Thierry Henry not being that far removed from being a player and having dealt with some of the situations that Balotelli's found himself in. I think Henry could maybe get the best out of him. Make a ton of sense. And he'd be a superstar in that city. And he'd be a superstar in a city where he would feel like a superstar. And I do think that's important. But not in the same way that he has in some of the other places he's been. He would still be able to be himself. It's a good balance. I think Montreal would be the perfect fit for Mario Balotelli.
And I think that the city would embrace having him there. I think that his personality would be embraced, what he would bring to the Impact. in the not just the on the field sense, but the PR sense and the community sense and all that kind of stuff. I think that having that kind of personality would attract eyeballs to Montreal that hadn't previously been there from outside. Obviously, Montreal and Canada itself, it would draw a United States set of eyes from fans to what Balotelli could be in Montreal. And I think also having a guy like Thierry Henry as your coach can be a tremendous counsel and help you continue to grow your game. And I think that having someone like having an Henry there to counsel Balotelli, I think would also be huge too.
I don't think it's about growing his game. It's just about maybe growing his head and being able to deal with these situations that arise and pressures and drama in a better way. I mean, Balotelli's an outstanding player, and he always has been. That he is what he is as a player. I don't see any dramatic change. I think if he's comfortable, you're going to get the best out of him. And Henry's a guy who can keep him comfortable. Montreal, I don't think the American eyeballs matter. I don't think any of that matters to Balotelli. Montreal's big enough as it is, and they're hungry for a superstar. You know, you saw the reaction when Didier Drogba signed there. I think Balotelli would get the same reaction. I think he would be absolutely loved in Montreal. And I think that's what he's needed, is a place where he feels that. Montreal would be the ideal fit for him. It would be the absolute perfect fit for him. It'd be the perfect fit for the club because they need that superstar. They need that focal point. They need that big figure. They need something to excite their fan base. And more importantly, they need somebody who can find the back of the net.
Yep.
And he checks all the boxes. So, and Joey Saputo can, with his ownership at Bologna, he can make some things happen in terms of, all right, if you've got to get the transfer done for him to go from Brescia to Bologna and then loan him to Montreal, whatever you got to do, maybe that makes it easier. I don't know. This would be the no-brainer of no-brainers in my book, is Balotelli to Montreal.
Yep. And I'd love to see that go down. Honestly, I would.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll get into some more news from around the league, some of the rumors floating around from around the league as well. We'll get into your Thursday thoughts. Throw them at us on Twitter at @SoccerDownHere. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here. Thursday thoughts. Tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here. We'll get into that. We are waiting the news coming from U.S. Soccer about the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. We should get an update. Looks like this summer. Nothing's leaked as of yet. Should get an update this afternoon about what this competition looks like, because it's going to look different. Stuart Holden teased that yesterday on Twitter. He's been part of the committee that's been, as Holden said, listening to some of the feedback. There's been talk about the tournament starting in March, not in May. We've wondered how that would work with some of the qualifiers coming from USL League 2, from NPSL, teams that predominantly stock their roster in the summer on college players that maintain their college eligibility. So how is this actually going to function? We will find out later today. So keep an eye on @OpenCup, and for an independent source that follows the tournament better than anybody else, Josh Hackala, and @US Open Cup on Twitter, thecup.us. Definitely a very important follow on a day like today. I'm just waiting to see how they navigate that, how they navigate the lower division teams that are, amateur college player based, that are summer league teams that will not be playing in March, and they generally open the tournament. So how does that look? How's that going to work? Are you going to have the MLS teams in the tournament a round earlier, or are we going to look completely differently with structure because you're starting earlier and some teams can't start earlier? I have no idea. So I'm intrigued by this whole setup that U.S. Soccer is about to create with the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. Other news from around the world right now: San Jose has re-signed Cristian Espinoza. They got him on a permanent transfer from Villarreal. Club record transfer fee, multi-year designated player contract. Espinoza had 13 assists last season for the Quakes while he was on loan. Big move for San Jose, an important piece to bring back to what was a good team. I think the question now for Matias Almeida and the Quakes is, how do you get better from here? Because you've got a lot of your core coming back, but where do you upgrade? And I don't know if there's really an easy answer. I think some of it is going to be a player like Andres Rios, showing you what I think he did in previous stops, and he came in mid-season, and he didn't really have a huge impact. All right, you get a full season of him. Is he going to give you 15 goals? Danny Houston, I think figuring out what Rios, Houston, Wondolowski do up top is going to be one huge element. Where does Magnus Eriksson fit? Does he become that number 10? Is it Vaco and Espinoza out wide? That's leaving you a spot for one forward. So who is it? Is it Rios? Is it Houston? Is it Wondolowski? Is it playing the hot hand? I want to see where Almeida goes with what he has, because he's pretty much bringing the same group back. Do we expect to see them dramatically better than they were last year? That's the part I don't know.
For me, I would think that same group, learning from Almeida, having a full season under their belt last year, having this off season to learn things and continue to become more fluid and comfortable with one another. I would think that just having that extra bit of training and experience and being together would help them at least lean toward taking those next steps of success. Because, as we had mentioned last year, what was it? 80% of the roster was a roster that Almeida had no hand in bringing in San Jose last year.
Well, no, because they had a roster and he came in. So yes, most of the players that he had nothing to do with. So you now have players that he's bringing in or reinforcing. It's like, okay, I want to have you here for this second season. I think that just having this group together and filling in the holes with what Almeida may want to do, I think that it would lean toward them improving just because they're around each other for another off season and getting toward another season together. Well, let me take the devil's advocate role here.
Go for it.
They didn't finish well last season.
True.
You would think that they had learned how he wanted them to play and developed that style of play and gotten more comfortable with it, and they didn't finish well. Did they run out of gas?
That would be my thought.
Well, I think it's part of it, but okay, how does that not happen this time around? And then when you look at the players and the decisions, this is what I wanted to pull up about the decisions that they made on rosters, because I don't know how many guys were under contract for this year that were already signed and how many they decided to bring back. That's what I wanted to double check, because if I'm not mistaken, a lot of their guys that are on their roster were already signed, and they didn't really have a lot of choices. Hold on.
And I would think for me, for Almeida, it would be bringing in those depth pieces to fill out 18, so that way you're not running out of gas toward the end of the year, and you're working
your roster
on.
is almost full. That's the thing, is that where the depth pieces have to be on a roster. And you look at San Jose's roster right now, you're going to loan a goalkeeper or two because you've got 5 under contract. Emi Ochoa is a young goalkeeper that's academy. You're going to loan probably 1. You'll keep 3, so we'll say 3. Defenders, you've got 8, so that's 11. Midfielders and wingers, you're adding another 9, so that's 20. Central attackers and forwards, that's 6 more, so that's 26. Like, you look at some of the other rosters around the league, San Jose is pretty well stocked, and with that many people, you would think that, well, the cap's probably pretty full too, so there might not be a whole lot of room to work with here. Looking back, and I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate. I believe it is. The only roster decisions that the Quakes had to make when they announced, club announces roster moves in terms of options, they exercised the 2020 contract option on Matt Bersano, backup goalkeeper, defender Paul Marie, who's probably going to be a backup outside back, and Jackson Yule, which was obvious one to pick up. They did not exercise the option on Francois Affolter, center back, Jimmy Ockford, center back, Kevin Partita, midfielder. So you already had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 guys under contract for 2020. So Almeida, this was one of the conversations coming into 2019 for Almeida is, man, he's kind of locked into his roster. Don't really have the flexibility to do much. He's even more locked in than we thought with all of these guys under these multiple-year contracts. Now, he's gotten a lot out of it, and they've been able to make a few moves, but I would love to go back to 2018 with Michael Stare and Fiorinelli, Jesse Fiorinelli, the general manager, and the decisions they made then, and some of the guys that they signed to longer-term contracts. Like, whoa. You better get these right, because you are really confining what your squad is. I don't know. We will see how they get out of some of this, because after this year, Wondolowski, this is it for him. You've got these guys got new contracts during 2019, or the option was automatically picked up by hitting certain performance thresholds according to the Quakes release. Eric Calvillo, Gilbert Fuentes, Florian Jungwirth, Shea Salinas, Tommy Thompson, Daniel Vega. All right. How many of these guys are coming back? Because you look at that 26 that they have, even loaning 2 goalkeepers out, so 28 total. A lot of your depth is filled. Now, can you loan some of these guys out to Reno 1868, for example, or other USL championship teams? I think you're probably going to need to open up some of that depth. You do need to be a little bit stronger, but Almeida is kind of limited to. They are what they are. I think Espinoza was the big one to get him back. You expect to see steps forward from Jackson Yule, from Tommy Thompson, Andres Rios. I think those are, and Marcos Lopez at left back. I think those are all guys that you expect to be better this year. Other guys will be more comfortable, will understand the system from day one. They can start better in the season because they started out really poorly. But they have to manage the physicality of the system that Almeida has them play. It's a very important element to it. And it's something that maybe Almeida has to find a little more balance with as well, because when you have a team that plays in this hard-running kind of team, and there's a lot of them. I mean, go back and look at Jurgen Klopp teams at Dortmund especially. I think he's managed it a little bit more with the crowded schedule that Liverpool has to deal with. You look at Red Bull teams anywhere, Leipzig, Salzburg, New York, all of them. You look at any team that plays that kind of style, you run the risk of running a team into the ground.
Yes.
And you've got to have a deep squad of guys that understand the way you want to play. And in MLS, I think it's even harder because it's harder to have that depth and have the same kind of talent in your second tier, in your third tier, and not have a huge drop-off in match performance. It's something that I would love to see what Almeida says as he starts to prepare for 2020, because if he can find a way for them to not lose their identity, but maybe pick their spots a little bit more in terms of where they burn their energy, I think the Quakes will be better off for it.
Right. Yeah, that for me is what I would like to, when I'm watching San Jose this year, it's like, pedal mash to the floor, and then by the time you're at the end of the season, I think that they did run out of gas. And so I want to see how it's managed this go-round and see if things are different toward the end of the season.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, get to your Thursday thoughts on Twitter. Use that hashtag and tweet at us at @SoccerDownHere. We'll get to that right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. Soccer Down Here, December 12th, Thursday. Hashtag Thursday Thoughts. We've had some thoughts in the first hour of the show. What about you guys? What are your thoughts? Let's hear them.
From yesterday, and this is setting up, Tafka had a couple of thoughts this morning. Mickey Turner had a link to an AP article. He says, even if MLS never wins CONCACAF Champions League, they could get an invite to the revamped Club World Cup. Because apparently, according to the AP, FIFA is thinking of inviting some non-champs to an enlarged version.
No. No, let's be very clear. When you say invite in that way, it sounds like they're just going to say, "Hey guys, could you come like play in our tournament?" And that's not how it's going to work. The revamped Club World Cup, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like the way they're doing this. I don't like that the Club World Cup is only going to take place every 4 years. I don't like it. Clubs don't operate like national teams. When you have a team that qualifies for the Club World Cup and then has to go play in the thing 3 years later, they're going to look very different. I don't like this setup at all. That's number one. Do I like that they've expanded it to more than what it is now? Yes, but I still think you could do that slightly and have it every year and have it actually make sense in the sense of a Club World Cup, not a World Cup. And it would be more impactful if you have, two teams from Europe go, and if you have the finalists from the Champions League, the finalists from the Copa Libertadores. Let's take the finalists from the Continental Finals and take them all and do a small group stage or whatever. Do that. Do that every year. Don't do this. Anyway. Okay. So now it's going to be staged every 4 years. It is going to have 8 teams from Europe. That means in the way Europe has decided for this upcoming one, and this is going to be in 2021 in China, Europe is giving their 8 slots all the Champions League winners 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. Europa League winners 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. I don't know why they want to give, and South America's doing the same, and giving Europa League and Sudamericana the same standing as their top competition, Champions League or Libertadores. I don't think that's a good idea, but whatever. Now, there is a limit on the maximum number of slots per country. It's 2. So you're going to have some teams have to fill in some of these gaps. And how each one determines that, that's going to be on South America. That's going to be on Europe. So South America is not going back to 2018 for their winners because they only get 6 spots. They're giving the 2019 and 2020 winners of the Libertadores and Sudamericana spots. And I'm assuming they're going to give the 2021 Libertadores and Sudamericana winners spots, and that's their 6. I guess. I mean, the document that was there from, October, didn't go into detail on the other 2 spots from South America, but that would make sense. I mean, it's we've seen it with the Libertadores and Sudamericana where those finals are, I think Sudamericana was early November. Libertadores was recently. They both, the Libertadores winner goes to the Club World Cup. I think that type of idea will continue. You get to CONCACAF, and it's 3 slots. All right. They have not specified how they're going to do this. It says the 2021 CONCACAF Champions League finalists will qualify. The 3rd slot is left hanging in the document. Is it a playoff between the losing semifinalists? I mean, that would seem to be the obvious one. You also go back to that 2 teams per country. And that's where it looks like in 2021, it's a safe assumption that MLS will have a team in the Club World Cup in 2021 because if Mexico only gets 2, I would like to think that an MLS team would be the next highest team, whether it's a semifinalist or whatever. They got to take care of business, but okay, opens the door. That's cool. I just don't like after that. Okay, for 21, fine. That's the way it's going to go. But then going forward, how does CONCACAF determine this with 3 slots and 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 champions who could go play in a Club World Cup in 2025? That's 4 champions for 3 spots. If you have a repeat, I guess it works out. If you have different countries represented, I guess it works out. Otherwise, CONCACAF gonna CONCACAF. It's just, I don't like the setup at all with it being every 4 years because the club game doesn't lend itself to that. National teams, fine. Clubs, no, because a club squad will look dramatically different year to year. And I don't like going, the 2018 Champions League winners who already played in a Club World Cup are going to go to another Club World Cup in 2021 because FIFA decided to revamp the format. That's foolish. So, I don't know. Not a fan.
No. Too many teams, not enough space.
No, too many teams is fine. I like the number of teams. It's just like, I like more teams. What it is now is not good enough. What it is now is a glorified exhibition. There's an in-between, I think. But more importantly, it needs to be every year. That's the number one thing that I'm agitated about. Because clubs change year after year. National teams aren't going out and recruiting in the same way. You do have a few that happens. Yes, we know. But in general, you're not having all these big changes to your roster year after year. Clubs do. I'd much rather see this every year to truly have a world champion at the club level every year.
Yes.
Just have more than the continental winners involved. That's all. Yesterday
in the USL Championship, the Miami FC was welcomed by Jake Edwards to the 2020 family. Tafka says it was an absolute travesty for Ottawa and a huge power move / fumble by CONCACAF to try and force a club into a league change. Hate for a club to have to move, but glad they were able to do so.
It's not exactly moving. I mean, they sold the rights. They got money. Like, I don't it's not a move. Like, it's not. This is going to have nothing to do with Ottawa Fury. You can say all the nice things about it. I mean, you bought the rights. You basically bought the ticket, and now Miami's going in instead of Ottawa. So it's not the exact same thing as the ownership couldn't do what they wanted to do, so they moved, and now they're gonna, the ownership and the front office and everybody's gonna move down to Miami and do it this way. Nah, it's just the Miami FC just bought the paperwork to get into the league. It's turned some heads. It's turned some heads in the lower division soccer wars with the Z conversations because Miami FC was a former North American Soccer League team, and the Miami FC has a case in front of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, about promotion and relegation. They had pretty much given the impression that they would never join USL, although there had been rumblings about conversations, and everybody's like, no, they wouldn't do that. But now they are, and it's even more complicated because they're doing this, and they're going to play at the stadium that is named for their owner, Ricardo Silva Stadium, at Florida International University. They're going to play closer to Miami than Inter Miami is. And it complicates things if you're Inter Miami. I mean, because Ricardo Silva's got the money to go out and spend and not have a traditional, small independent USL championship team, but to have a big, bold team that's going to compete for championships and likely be a team that you don't want to see in the Open Cup. I don't think Silva's going to come in and not spend with this team. Now, they've got some work to do. Miami FC, when you look at what they did in NISA, and that's another league now that is affected by all of this, they lost one of their headliners in Miami. Miami won the Eastern Division or Conference or Region or however the showcase thing was structured this fall. Miami drew 1,200, 1,300 per game in that, because it wasn't big. I mean, you were playing teams that nobody knew. It felt thrown together. You go back to their NASL final season, and I think they drew 5,000 to 6,000 a game. Now, USL Championship 5,000 to 6,000 is solid. You're going to be upper middle of the pack. And Miami doesn't want to be just another team. So can they now, after being something big, not first division big, but big, and then going to NPSL and NISA and bouncing around acronyms of leagues and fans maybe not understanding where they're at and what it looks like and what the level is, can they now reignite the idea of what they want to do and do it in a different landscape now with David Beckham and the Moss brothers and Marcelo Claure doing Inter Miami up the road in Fort Lauderdale and trying to build a big-time venue in Miami. It's a very different landscape. I'm fascinated by it. I mean, if you're Ricardo Silva and you're Miami FC, being an NISA didn't make any sense for them.
No.
You couldn't be as big as you wanted to be in a league like that. You couldn't. USL Championship was the spot that they could do, and Silva has made it pretty clear. He's got the money to do MLS. He did not want to do MLS in the way that they were currently structured. Silva makes a lot of money from MLS. He sells the rights with MP and Silva worldwide, and a lot of the international rights are picked up by MP and Silva and then farmed out to different international broadcasters. He makes money from it. I mean, he knows what's going on, but he did not want to basically pay an expansion fee. And now he's in USL Championship. Can he make the money that he wants to make with the money he's going to spend in USL Championship and have it be a viable business? I think he can. I think it's a different amount of money both ways. I don't think he's going to spend like he would if he was in MLS, and he's not going to make as much as he would make if he was in MLS. But can he be far more successful than having a team that is obviously far better than anybody else in NPSL or NISA? Yeah, I think this is a move that makes more sense. I'm just curious to see all of the different knock-on effects it has. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody expected this. And I'll be fascinated to see what it causes in response.
Yeah, the trickle down for me is what I'm going to be. Trickle down, trickle over, whatever the appropriate term is. But I want to see how the ripples in the pond because of this move to USL Championship for me. That's the Palace intrigue of this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting bit of domino effects from it.
Marshall Voigt has linked to an article for us this morning. And it's from Andrew Musgrove from the Chronicle over in Newcastle. Danny Mills has gone in on Miguel Almiron again. Named him in his PL team of worst performers this season.
Okay.
So here's what Mills said about it. Let's see. He's working very, very hard, but he's in the team to be creative. He's in the team to create chances and to score goals. He's not doing it.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
So apparently, I think he's stupid.
Tell me why you think he's stupid, though?
First off, I've thought that Steve Bruce was expecting things out of Miguel Almiron that he just doesn't do, or he hasn't done in the past. He's more of an assist guy, and now that he's finally gotten that first assist, it's good to see that on the board. He to me at Newcastle, he's someone who is helping to create chances, and that doesn't show up on the scorecard. And for me, it's look at the entire picture. I thought that Steve Bruce had an unfair expectation about him coming in. It's like, I need him to score goals. I need him to do this. I need him to do this. And playing him out of position, I thought, is just Steve Bruce not knowing what his asset is when he's coming in to take over for Rafa Benitez. So I think that Danny Mills is just off when it comes to his impression as to what Miguel Almiron is supposed to be at Newcastle. So that's when I saw the headline, I'm like, okay, so what's he doing now? But once again, this doesn't surprise me. I think that you're just not looking at past results and how Miguel is more of a straw to stir the drink for me than someone who's going to sit there and score goals, because that's why you brought in St. Maximin and Joel Linton in the first place. It's for Miguel to get them the ball as opposed for Miguel to take the ball and score.
But this is
Mills to me is just off.
No, this is where a lot of the discussion is muddled, because what you started saying about Steve Bruce not using Miguel Almiron in the correct way, that's the number one element of it for me. That is the top thing that's happening here. What Danny Mills is saying, he's in the team to be creative. He's in the team to create chances and to score goals. He's not doing it. That's what Steve Bruce is saying that he's in the team to do. Should he be in that role? That's a different conversation. But when you're playing him, and Steve Bruce, who was talking about it, because Steve Bruce is, in my opinion, not exactly been intelligent in making people think that Miguel Almiron is not playing well. But Bruce is making it clear that's what he's in the team for. Now, should he be in the team for that? It's a different conversation. No, he shouldn't. He should be playing in a deeper role. He shouldn't be playing on the right wing. He's not creating a ton of chances. I mean, that's a fact. The numbers are there. You know, he's 8th in the squad in chances created per match. That's low for him. Now, he's playing in a different role. But that's low from what we saw Miguel Almiron do in Atlanta. Now, I think the reason it's low is because of the role he's in. And I think what he's being asked to do isn't the fit for him. I think that's the issue here. But you look at the history here of what he's done. In Atlanta in 2017, he created 1.8 chances per game. This is just per game, not per 90 minutes, per game. He created 2.1 in 2018. Last year at Newcastle, he created 1.3 chances per game. This year, 0.7. You know, the who scored ratings are lower this year than last year at Newcastle. Both are lower than what he did in his time in Atlanta. This is the lowest one he's had. This is lower than what he did at Lanús the season before he came to Atlanta. A lot of it is down to the way he's being played. Is Danny Mills wrong to say that Miguel Almiron is not playing well? I don't think he's wrong to say that. I think he's wrong when he says that Miguel Almiron's not a quality player. That's completely and utterly incorrect. Those are two different statements. And it's very important to draw the distinction. My issue is with the way Steve Bruce is using Miguel Almiron. And that's why I think even just the Newcastle numbers, just compare the Newcastle numbers. 10 games last year, a little over 760 minutes played. He's almost doubled that this year in terms of minutes played. He's creating half as many chances. He is completing about 3 passes less per game. He's not as involved as he should be based off what he can give you. Fewer shots. He is completing more dribbles now. He's fouled in about the same numbers as he always has been. So he's creating those free kick opportunities. He should be more involved. And he's not. And a lot of it is down to the role for me. And that's the issue. I don't care. Danny Mills, I could care less what Danny Mills is saying about him because I don't think Danny Mills understands what kind of a player he is.
Yes.
But Danny Mills saying that he is disappointing this year, that's not necessarily wrong. And it's okay to say that. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. Steve Bruce is not using a very talented player that the club spent a lot of money for in a correct way because I don't think Steve Bruce has done the homework on how Miguel Almiron actually played in Atlanta and played at Lanús because he played in a very different role in Atlanta to what he's doing in Newcastle, and he played in an incredibly different role at Lanús than he played in either place. At Lanús, you're talking about a player. All right, let's look at the progression here because this is the difference. At Lanús, in the last season he was in the Argentine Superliga, you've got 12 games on the board on who scored that he played, just under 1,000 minutes. Averaged about 54 passes per game because he was playing in a deeper role. That's 10 to 12 more than he averaged per game per season here in Atlanta because he was in a more advanced role. He's not seeing as much of the ball. He's in a further up role. At Newcastle, he's 21 passes per game this year versus 54 per game at Lanús. Like, you're talking about a completely and utterly different expectation for a player. He had more assists in Atlanta than he did anywhere else because he was in a role that created that. I said it a lot during his time here in Atlanta. He fit what Tata Martino wanted to do with Atlanta United. It wasn't necessarily the best way that he can play. He can have an impact in different ways. He fit this team very well. But is he a traditional number 10 in another team? No, he's not. I don't think he is. I think he's an 8. I think he is a box-to-box transition midfielder who can flip the game on its head, and you want him on the ball more. You want him running at players more. And the chances he creates, like, he's not a linking player in a normal sense. He's a player who creates chances because of his transition. And when he's not seeing the ball much and he's being put in a right wing role, or he's being put in some of the roles that we've seen, even last year when he was playing as a second forward at Newcastle, when they were playing a 5-3-2 that a lot of times turned into a 5-4-1 because Almiron's dropping in deeper to help the midfield. That's not getting the best out of him. It's a better role for him than what we're seeing right now, but is it the best? No. I don't think you're going to come across a lot of teams that are going to play in the way that Atlanta United did under Tata Martino. They built that team around Miguel's ability to transition. You know, it was the thing that a lot of people looked at with Frank de Boer and saying, well, why aren't they playing the same way? Well, you're not built the same way, and you don't have the player who you were built around. So you had to, reimagine who Atlanta United was and find it and recreate it in a different vision. Miguel can do a lot of different things. What he's doing at Newcastle, playing on the right wing, is not the best spot for him, and he's not gonna play well there. He's not going to perform well there, and a lot of times he's going to end up on a list like Danny Mills' list. He should be playing in a different role, and that's the number one thing to it. That's it. You didn't bring Miguel Almiron in there to create a bunch of chances. If you did, then you have to create the team around him to have him do what he did here in Atlanta. Go back and look at what he did in Atlanta. He was a number 10 a lot of times, although not only. Go back to the playoffs in 2018 where he was a second forward, but it was a very different way of playing that second forward role because he was dropping deep. He was the guy who was transitioning the team. They committed one more player deeper to defend with. He was still doing the same general things, but in a more advanced role because you wanted to be defensively secure. But in Atlanta, it was all about get the ball to Miguel and let him go. Not let him pick out a wonderful pass, although he could do that, mostly on the run. It was get him on the run. Newcastle's not creating a system to do that, to get the best out of him, so he's got to find a way to be more effective. And he's got to produce more. I mean, it's a fair question. I know we get very defensive about Miguel, and I understand it, but it's a fair request that you want him to produce more. I think he's pressing. I think he's trying too much right now. I think he's not comfortable, and part of that's being played in a role that doesn't suit him. He's got to get to the level that we saw him so often in 2018 where he was comfortable and you saw the best of him. Because we haven't seen it at Newcastle at all, although it looked a whole lot better under Rafa Benitez than it does under Steve Bruce. I don't think it's going to change. I don't think Steve Bruce is going to all of a sudden figure this out. I think you're probably going to need to move on if you're Miguel Almiron and make sure that you're going to a club that, one, the manager is going to stick around as best as you can ensure that. Yeah. The manager that brings you in. But more importantly, that plays the style that suits you. And I think when you go back and you look at some of the comments that came out of Miguel's representation, at the end of everything with Atlanta United, and Miguel's agent said some things that turned some heads and was a little disappointing to read from his point. I think they got antsy. I think they wanted the money, and I think they chose a club that was a big club, and Newcastle should be a big club. Newcastle should be a bigger club than they are. Steve Bruce isn't managing them like a big club. Steve Bruce is managing them like a relegation-threatened club. And that's not a fit for Miguel Almiron. He needs to go somewhere where he can play and it plays to his strengths and he can play the game that suits him best. And it's not in Newcastle. Is it another club in the Premier League? It could be. It could be in a different country altogether. But Steve Bruce isn't going to dramatically change what he's asking him to do. Now, Miguel has to perform better in the role that he's being asked to do. I think that's an absolute fair thing to say. But he's never going to be what he was in Atlanta in the role that Steve Bruce is going to play him in. It's never going to happen. I hope that distinction makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, when you start to see when Steve Bruce is introduced as manager at Newcastle and you see the quotes that were coming across from him about Miguel Almiron, and you're seeing in the written word that Steve Bruce doesn't quite understand who he has in Miguel and what he's capable of. And it seemed like it was very square peg round hole-ish with his expectations of Almiron in the lineup. You're sitting there and you're going, okay, that's a bit of a red flag. And I think that anyone who has seen Miguel from an Atlanta United perspective and wants him to succeed in Newcastle, because when we go to matches, we see folks wearing Almiron jerseys of Newcastle that wander into Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I think that it's just that you want to see someone succeed, and then when you have someone who doesn't quite understand what he has, and then you see the lack of results, then there's a concern across the board, I think.
Yeah, there should be, but there are some things that are valid criticisms of Miguel Almiron and his time at Newcastle. The one that I just wanted to pull up and compare that is concerning. One of the things in the article was that Miguel Almiron, on average, had the most shots per game in the Newcastle squad, and he's averaging 1.6 shots per game. It was 1.9 last year in his 10 matches. Here in Atlanta, in 2017, it was 2.8 shots per game. In 2018, it was 3.8. And he took 1.8 of those from outside the 18. The criticism of Pity Martinez taking long-range shots last year, one of the reasons it blew my mind was Miguel took more. And Miguel took more bad ones in 2018. He's not taking as many from outside the box now. He's taking 0.6. But he's getting a shot per game in the penalty area right now, 0.9. He got 1.2 last year. You're getting that many shots inside the area, you've got to find the back of the net. That's valid. It's not that he, and that was one of the first things I wanted to look at, because it jumped out to me how many shots he took outside the 18 in 2018. It's like, is he taking a whole lot of bad? Now, I've seen him take some bad shots with the Newcastle matches I've seen, but it's not even that so much. He's getting shots inside the 18, and he's not finding the back of the net. Now, Mills's critique, they finished here, is you get put in as a creative midfielder to create chances and score goals. He's not doing that. If you're not doing that, then as hard as you are working, and as much as the fans appreciate that, sometimes you need more. I don't think he's actually being put in as a creative midfielder, first off. I think he's being played too often on the right side, which doesn't suit him. And also, he is not a traditional creative midfielder to begin with. He is a transition midfielder that creates opportunities in transition, not in picking out passes and being a playmaker, a traditional number 10. He's a different player. He's a very different player. And what I feel like is happening so much, because the fans, for the most part, I think, are responding to his work. His work is appreciated. But he is doing the role of an 8 in a position that is not an 8. And that's why it feels out of place, because it is. If you played him in a different position, or you moved the pieces around, if you were Steve Bruce, I think you would get more out of Miguel Almiron. The fact is, Newcastle's not exactly bad at the moment.
No. They found their form recently.
And this happens for players, and it's part of a career. If they are at their best right now with him playing in the role that he's playing, and he's not at his best there, but the team is at their best with him doing that, well, then you continue. And you have to be better in the moments that you get. I mean, they're in 11th place right now. They are 7 points out of Europe? Or actually 2 points out of Europe. They're 2 points out of the 5th spot, but they're 7 points out of the number 4 spot. Now they're 7 points clear of the final relegation spot.
Yes.
But Newcastle's won 4 of their last 6. It's hard to criticize Steve Bruce a ton overall when you're winning 4 of your last 6. Is he getting the best out of Miguel Almiron? No, he's not. And I don't think he truly gets what he could use Miguel Almiron in, what kind of role he could use him in. But if right now the group that is, playing together, if they're getting results, that's the most important thing. And if Miguel's individual performances suffer for the better of the collective, well, that's how the game works.
Let's see what else has come on the board this morning.
That thought. You look,
I'm holding. I will look.
You search, and we will take a quick break, and we will come back. There's some other things to get to as well. Plenty to talk about on a Thursday. Hang out with us. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Thursday Thoughts edition of the show, December 12th. Get your Thursday thoughts in. If you're listening live, tweet at us at Soccer Down here. If you're not listening live, you can go ahead and share your Thursday thoughts. You can also chime in on requested Friday flashback topics. Last week we talked about bad logos in U.S. soccer. But we can get into anything you want in the way of a flashback topic. Is it favorite teams? Is it favorite players? Is it best holding midfielders in American soccer history? Wherever you want to take it, we can get into it. I'll have a poll come up with some of the suggestions and other ideas. I'll have a poll come up tonight, and
I've got
you guys
one.
can vote on it. Okay, well, save your suggestion. We'll get to that after the show, and we'll put it in the poll.
Yeah, since I'm not on the show tomorrow, I figure I will let you know what my idea is.
Yes. John will be talking about a different kind of football tomorrow while we are on the air on Georgia Public Broadcasting, because it is the high school football championships at Georgia State Stadium. So you'll get a chance to work from Georgia State Stadium and maybe give us a little bit of a scouting report on the venue.
Yep. Went there Sunday for Media Day, and thumbs up to what Georgia State has been able to do to the inside infrastructure and the 200 and 300 level. And I haven't been out on the field. We're having rehearsals later today to kind of get the lay of the land. But It's interesting to see how it's been converted from Turner Field to Pete Petite Field at Georgia State Stadium. 755 Club's a little different. There are some wide open spaces now that weren't there originally when it was in the baseball configuration. It's been trimmed and reconfigured to about 26,000 for football, for those who haven't had the chance to see Georgia State play there. But, 8 games in about 38 hours, and then I will go to Waffle House probably about 1 a.m. Sunday morning.
There you go. Good times.
So that's the plan. And so I will give you my question once we are off the air for Friday Flashback. But salute to everybody who sends stuff, and send your Friday Flashback questions to us on the Twitters or on all of our social media platforms.
Yep. Jessica Charman will chime in on the Friday Flashback topics in the first hour of the show tomorrow. So give some good ideas that we'll get into when we get there. All right. A couple other ways you can support the show. We do have scarves available. They are $20. You can pick them up at one of our events, or we can send it to you and just throw in an extra $5. Send us a message if you're interested in one of our Holding Midfielders Appreciation Society scarves. They are starting to move pretty quick, so if you want to get one, don't wait too long. If you want to get one of our T-shirts or mugs or anything else on our Teespring store, it's teespring.com/soccer-down-here. You can also just search for Soccer Down Here on Teespring and find us pretty easily. It's also pinned on our Twitter account and on our Facebook account. And those things are very important to helping us grow and helping us add more programming. We've got some more 1v1s coming up over the next week or so. There's lots of different things popping off that we want to dig deeper into, like we did earlier this week with the Georgia Revolution. We want to catch up with East Atlanta FC, the new USL League 2 team based in Conyers, Georgia. We're still efforting the SSA USL League 2 team and want to learn more about their plans as they start their season in Dallas, Georgia in 2020, and they'll move over to Marietta in 2021. But we'll be digging into all those different stories. If there's stories around the Southeast or honestly around the country that you want us to dig into with a 1v1, give us suggestions. Tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here. We'd love to hear it and provide the programming that you guys want to hear. One thing we try to provide is an update on rumors and how realistic they are or not. And there's a few around MLS right now. Pulso Sports Network in Seattle is reporting that Kim Keehee is negotiating with the Sounders, could return to the Sounders, but there's no definite in that negotiation at the moment. They're going to need center backs in a big way at the moment, because right now they have Xavier Arriaga as a center back, and they have Gustav Svensson, who they can move back to a center back. That's it. They need center backs. If they bring Kim Keehee back, it would make a ton of sense, but they've got to find contract numbers that make sense to do that. Sam Stejskal is echoing the reports that were out there previously about Lucas Cavallini coming from Puebla in Liga MX to Vancouver. He's saying the deal is close to a $5 million deal. Vancouver needs somebody who can score goals, and a Canadian national team player who can do that would be at a premium. So it makes a ton of sense if they can make that one happen. And Marc Dos Santos will finally start to get some material to work with, because it's a poor roster right now. They're going to have to make some upgrades if the Whitecaps are going to be competitive in 2020. Orlando City is putting together pieces to make them far more competitive, and they're still trying to add to it. Sources at Marca Claro are reporting that Orlando City are set to sign 21-year-old Honduran international defender Daniel Maldonado from Motagua. Atlanta United fans know Motagua now because that's the first opponent in the round of 16 in the CONCACAF Champions League. So if teams want to come in and sign their top players, have at it. Good job, Orlando City. Get it done. That'll make it a lot easier for Atlanta when they see Motagua in mid-February. A couple other renegotiations that could be heading to the positive side. Sounder at Heart is reporting that Harry Shipp will re-sign with Seattle. TVA Sports in Montreal is reporting that Rod Fanny will re-sign with the Impact. Now, a couple players outside the league that are being linked. Chicago is linked to Colombian winger Alex Castro, who played last season at Tolima in the second division in Colombia. According to Julian Capera, he is under Deportivo Cali's control. They have his pass. It wasn't linked as such on Transfermarkt. Very well could be. It could have been a loan or what have you. But 25 years old. He had a combined 10 goals and assists last season. Chicago needs bodies. They need wingers. That's definitely a position of need. Castro doesn't move the needle in terms of selling tickets, and that's another thing they need. But, can he be a quality player for the Fire? Could be. You have to see how he adjusts, have to see how he fits. Another winger from South America, Anderson Julio, is linked to Real Salt Lake. He's 23 years old. He's from Ecuador, playing at LDU Quito. It's coming from El Futbolero, which is based in Ecuador, and reporting that it could be a roughly $3 million deal. That's a pretty significant investment. But if you're RSL and Sebastian Salcedo has moved on to Pumas, you've moved on from Joao Plata, and you're getting a winger from Ecuador who is younger than Plata, roughly same age as Salcedo, and you're bringing him in on a $3 million deal that if you sign him to a long-term deal, you can make that work in TAM. Makes sense. It feels like a very realistic type of move that RSL could make. Roger Gonzalez of CBS is reporting that Liga MX sides could be interested in coming in for Dallas right back Reggie Cannon. Cannon has been, I think, linked to some European offers as well, but Liga MX was one that we had not heard. You've seen players come from Liga MX into MLS, and you're seeing more and more. Polito, now Cavallini, more fairly certain that he's going to end up in MLS. Are you going to see players go the other way? Why not? Especially a player like Cannon, who's young, probably would love a raise and might be able to get a raise with certain teams in Mexico. So you're going to see more movement in general between MLS and Liga MX. And I think American players going to play in Mexico is a good thing. It doesn't happen enough. And if you're not getting the amount of time, or you're not getting the money you want, or the club's not willing to sign you to the new deal that you want to sign, go to Mexico.
Yeah.
Go play for a top club in Mexico and get paid and play for a good quality club. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
I think we're going to see more of that. I think we definitely will. A couple of other things in the lower division world. Orlando City, a funding package has been passed for a new stadium in Orlando City, which creates the pathway for them to move out of, I believe it's Taft Stadium, an older venue that has had a few limitations. Looks like Oklahoma City and will join Louisville in a new venue. Will join Colorado Springs in a new venue as USL Championship. I think infrastructure, investment, it feels like it's more stable and it's growing year after year. That's important.
And especially when you're looking at stadia in markets, you have the ties to them, but there's always that time where you've got to move on for what's best for the franchise, what's best for the city, and all that kind of stuff. And if that opportunity can present itself to where you can be in a place where you can hang your hat for a while and be a part of that next version of yourself, I think that those kinds of things are important, and to be able to do it now as things are growing, I think that's big.
A little bit more detail on the NWSL news from early in the week. Caitlin Murray, great piece over at Yahoo Sports about U.S. Soccer denying the NWSL's funding request. And I think when you see the headline, it's like, oh, man, what's U.S. Soccer doing now? But when you get into the details, it was a pretty crazy request from the NWSL. It was $47 million over 9 years. And that far exceeds what U.S. Soccer has given the NWSL so far in 7 years. It's been around $20 million in operational costs and U.S. women's national team salaries. I understand why it was denied. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I think the offer to continue with the current relationship for another year while they try to sort out what it looks like is very fair. Hopefully happens. the NWSL, I think, to be where they want to be, they need to be more reliant on themselves.
Yes.
And have the independence to do things that maybe U.S. Soccer isn't interested in, or doesn't want to drive. They need their money to come more from themselves. They need their money eventually, and this is a challenge. It's a valid part of this. They need to make money. It's a business, and you can't rely on the handout from the federation to survive year after year. And when you're asked for more, yeah, the NWSL is at a point where it can grow, and that investment would be an investment. It would help them grow. But is that something U.S. Soccer should be taking on? I don't know. I don't know. You have to make the compelling case. It's a big investment that they would be asking from U.S. Soccer over the next 9 years. And a bigger investment than the league had made previously, which was essential to the league surviving. So I do think they will continue a relationship, and I do think there will be a funding component outside of just the women's national team salaries. That I don't expect that to change in the CBA and the relationship between the U.S. women's national team and U.S. Soccer. I do think they will probably, for the foreseeable future, keep players under salary and defray costs from the NWSL. For players who choose to stay in the NWSL, they'll get a salary from U.S. Soccer. I think that'll continue, and I think that's a good relationship to continue. But how much more should U.S. Soccer do to fund the NWSL? It's a valid debate to have at the U.S. Soccer level. I think they do want to support it. I think they do want to continue its growth, but they also can't be the sole funder. You can't be in that situation. It kind of feels like a charitable request, a nonprofit request, and when you get to the mega funders, they don't want to be the only group that's funding you, because then it feels like, well, if they pull their funding or things change for them and they have to diminish it or not re-up the next agreement, then they feel like their investment is going to go away because the league can't survive on its own, or the organization can't survive on its own. NWSL has to learn how to survive on its own, and this type of investment would take them up a notch. Can they survive on their own? That's what they have to prove right now, and maybe not ask for quite so much at this point. Maybe get that sustainability locked down first.
Yeah, for me, in any business, regardless of what we're talking about here, you could be, an up-and-coming widget company. But I would think that if you want to continue to grow as a company / corporation / entity over time, you're going to want to become self-sufficient or more self-sufficient than you have in the past. And everything that you've said is registered with me and is bang on with my thought process that, if you want to grow, you want to do things yourself. You don't want to be on the reliance of others when it comes to making sure that you make ends meet. Because to your point, you sit there and it's like, okay, if benefactor X decides that they want to do things differently and they want to go in another direction, then your own future is hanging in the balance. And no, I think that the league has to figure out ways to become more self-reliant, more self-sufficient, come up with their own ideas about how to advance the league and make sure that it, at the same time, that it is stable going forward and that you're not overextending yourself just for the sake of, okay, let's bring in all of these folks and relying on franchise fees and things like that. If you wanted to do something like that, to where if that goes away, then it's not invested properly. But yeah, for me, self-sufficiency is the future for the NWSL, and it's just taking those steps and not being afraid to take those steps to make sure that you can continue to grow.
The franchise fee thing is something that a lot of people have brought up when it comes to MLS, and they bring it up about USL Championship, and there's a lot of discussion about what the franchise fees actually do. Now, both of those leagues are structured very differently, and NWSL is structured differently. I'm not 100% sure how NWSL is structured in this regard, and that would be a question for people who follow the league a little more closely behind the scenes. it's not a bad thing to bring in franchise fees and to bring in expansion fees. I think people look at it as this negative when it's not. It's growth.
No, it is growth.
And NWSL has to expand. I don't think they are going to be viable at the size that they are. They have to expand. They have to bring in those fees to expand. The question for me, if I was U.S. Soccer and I got this funding request and I knew what I'd done for the organization in previous years, my question would be, what is this going to do? Do I have to give you more money to keep the doors open, or is this a strategic investment to grow the league? Is this going to allow you to maybe charge less in franchise fees to add more teams? Is this going to allow those teams to have a kickstart of allocation money to go sign more players? Is this going to be a setup that would allow the league to compete for the top players in the world? What is this exactly doing? Because that's the part that's unclear. I don't know where the NWSL stands in that. Is the NWSL sustainable as it is? If it is, and this is a request to grow and be bigger,
yeah,
it's a different conversation than if it is a funding request just to fund the league. Because if the league is not sustainable on its own, I feel like it has been. You look at where it is the last couple of years. It's been good. The quality's been good. There are things that have to get better. This whole expansion process with Sacramento has been a nightmare. When to the point that you're getting Paul Riley tweeting like, "Hey, could you tell us? Like, we'd like to plan our season, and we'd like to know what's going to happen. We'd like to plan, if we're going to have to protect players and all that stuff. So could we kind of make a decision here?" Stuff like that. If I'm U.S. Soccer, I'm going to go back to the league, and I think it's fair to say let's continue where we're at right now. Maybe even throw a little bit more money into it to help get Sacramento over the line, or to help, create the media component or the office component to grow. Whatever. Okay, fine. That's a valid request. That's a valid ask. All right, do it. But then long term, I want to know, what is your structure? What is your front office going to look like? Who is your commissioner going to be? Because you haven't been able to get this done yet. Who is going to derive the leadership from the league standpoint? Is it Merritt Paulson, who's taken on a ton to grow this league, and he has really created a blueprint for it? He talked about in an interview at The Athletic that he spent more time on the NWSL than MLS. Part of it is because I think the Timbers are a little closer to running themselves right now, but is he going to have to do more? Is he going to need more help? Is he going to have to get help from Deloy Hansen in Utah? Is he going to have to bring new owners in who can help push this forward for him? I don't know if that's the Federation's job to do that at this point. And that makes this complicated because they don't want to see their investment of $20 million over 7 years go away. It would do no one any good for the league to struggle and or go away. They want to continue it, but you can't just keep throwing money at money at money. There has to be better explanation as to who is going to lead you, how are they going to lead you, what is the office going to look like, what is the infrastructure going to look like of the league, what's the expansion strategy, what's the overall goal to get to in the next 5 years, what's the goal to get to in the next 10 years, what is it? And then maybe I make a decision about increasing my investment and what it specifically would cover. Because if you're asking for that much money over 9 years, is U.S. Soccer going to fund the player pool? And if it is, well, then it makes it a little bit easier when you start dealing with the CBA and the national team player pool and stuff. If U.S. Soccer is basically saying, you know what, we're going to take this on because it's going to help this league grow. It's going to give girls a better chance to be professional players. We're going to fund the salary cap for every team for the next 9 years. Okay, then that opens up the player pool for the national team, in my opinion. It should. Then you're not worried about, like, well, I can't call this player in because they're not being paid by U.S. Soccer and blah, blah, blah. It could be a very significant investment. It could be a very good investment to make. But there are valid questions about how the NWSL is going to be structured over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And it's something they have to answer at the league level. And if that is a subcommittee of the ownership or whatever league leadership they have, Amanda Duffy is there, but she's not the commissioner. She's, I think, in the running to be the commissioner. But the fact that she hasn't been named the commissioner, like, it feels very up in the air about the leadership of the NWSL, and they have to get that right before I think it makes sense to make that kind of an investment from U.S. Soccer.
I want to see your business plan. I mean, that's what I'd sit there and it's like, okay, you want this money? I want to see what you're doing with it. I want to see your business plan. I want to see what you're looking to do with this, other than just keep the lights on and throwing money at a perceived problem. So that's how I would be looking at it, at least from my perspective.
A couple more tweets to wrap up on a Thursday Thoughts edition of the show.
All right. The Colonel came in and was wondering about elevating the pitch at Mercedes-Benz when it came to FIFA and sightlines. Yesterday he was discussing that notion. He said he didn't know that FIFA cared about sightlines, and a solution is what was proposed for the 94 World Cup at Arrowhead. It obviously wasn't implemented because Arrowhead wasn't selected. You elevate the pitch to the same level as the current front row of seats. So that would be his thought on fixing sightlines for 2026. Elevate the pitch 20 feet out of the pit it sits in, level with the first row of seats, fixes sightlines at the expense of less than 5,000 seats.
You could do it in 2026 because you're not going to have the Falcons playing during that time. Now, I don't know how you do it, and that's way beyond my expertise. I don't know how you create the platform and then put the quality pitch on top of it and set that up. It seems doable, and like the Colonel says, it was a plan in 94 at Arrowhead. Ultimately, they did not get matches. It sounds feasible. It would not be feasible in general unless you're creating a structure, I guess, in some ways similar to what the Tottenham Stadium has done, where you're able to make it very different between American football and soccer. Because you couldn't have that elevated space for the Falcons games or for American football games because those seats come back out. So it wouldn't work. Like, you'd have to, long term, if you're going to do this every time to eliminate the sightlines, you'd have to have some kind of system that elevates the pitch temporarily and then lowers it for American football. I don't know if that's realistic or not. But for a short-term situation, considering what they're going to do for the Final Four and all the restructuring they're doing for that, for a month of a tournament, yeah, I would think it's possible. I would think that's a realistic way to solve that problem if FIFA says, hey, this is something you have to solve. I don't know if they would or not. I have no idea.
And then Clayton Poss, he says he was watching the CONCACAF Champions League draw on Facebook. They had a translator, and I feel like I remember his stating games would be played on ESPN and Fox. Could this only be for Mexico, or do you think ESPN Plus would have the games?
It hasn't been announced, so if that is the deal for the United States, I would think that ESPN and or Fox would announce it. I don't think it'd be on both. That wouldn't make much sense. I believe, and I did not hear the translator, so I could be wrong in this, Clayton, but I believe they were probably talking about the partners in Central America that had the draw that they were being aired on. And I can't remember who had what, but there are ESPN channels in Central America and Mexico. There are Fox channels in Central America and Mexico. And I know some have had CONCACAF Champions League and some haven't. So he could have been saying, or she could have been saying that, you know, we're live on ESPN in Mexico, we're live on Fox in Costa Rica or something like that. And that could have just been for the draw. And I would assume those would be the television partners going forward. I never saw a real explanation as to why Today NA didn't have this after it had been announced that they did.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's just a negotiation about, you know, the rights for 2020, because this would be part of the 2020 competition. This would be part of the draw, would be part of that package. So, you know, who is going to have this? I don't know. And it's something that has to get solved, because for MLS teams, it's very important. For, I think, Liga MX teams in the United States, it's very important, because, look, the ratings are out there. The ratings show you that People are watching Liga MX in Spanish in the United States. People are watching soccer in Spanish in the United States in large numbers. The Premier League numbers in Spanish are big. Other leagues are big. People in Spanish watching the United States national teams, male and female, are big. So this is not just an English language question right now. This is a general, who is going to have the rights to this and how are they going to structure it? If TUDN gets it, and they've shown a lot of commitment to having CONCACAF programming before, if they get it, and this is something they're doing more and more of, and they get the English language rights as well, and they have English language commentary, and something they're doing more and more of, and I think they're doing it in a much better way as they add more bilingual broadcasters, more specific English language broadcasters, and they're doing more in terms of Liga MX games in English on their TUDN extra platform and on their website and on streaming. If they were able to get all of it and do it in the right way, great. I just want it to be accessible, and I want it to be easy for people to watch in whichever language they choose. I don't want to discount the Spanish language impact of it. I think that's very, very important. But I do hope that there is a very easy English language component for people who want to watch it that way, because these are big games, and if they're not on easily accessible TV, as we saw with the Open Cup last year, people might not take it as seriously as they should. I really hope that this gets sorted out, and I was very disappointed to see that the draw did not get aired on TUDN, and that concerned me.
One other note before we go, just coming across, Philadelphia Union have announced that their USL club Bethlehem Steel will now become Philadelphia Union 2 ahead of the 2020 USL Championship season.
Not playing near Bethlehem kind of made that a no-brainer. I mean, when they couldn't play at Lehigh anymore because they didn't have lights and it wasn't a suitable venue for Division II professional soccer, it didn't make a whole lot of sense for them to be called Bethlehem Steel and play in Chester and play in Philadelphia. So it makes sense. I know people are upset about it and been out of shape about it. The idea of the Bethlehem Steel branding was very cool, and I think Philadelphia did some cool stuff even before they branded their reserve team as Bethlehem Steel. It has nothing to do with the original Bethlehem Steel, and I don't know why people are confusing the two. It was a cool branding thing to do, but the original Bethlehem Steel soccer team was a powerhouse in the 20s and 30s, and it was run by the Bethlehem Steel company. This was a cool branding thing, and can Philadelphia still do cool branding things with it? Probably not anytime soon, because people are going to be bent out of shape, but could you do a throwback kit like you did before? Yeah, and you could do some things, and I think honor the original history of the Bethlehem Steel, which is the important thing here, not the USL Championship team name. I think people are getting upset about it, and it really shouldn't. If you can't play near Bethlehem, you shouldn't be called Bethlehem Steel.
Tim McDermott, the union's chief business officer, said for the past several years, diligently explored numerous stadium options in the Lehigh Valley. Unfortunately, there is still not a viable stadium solution that will meet the current stadium requirements for USL Championship. At the same time, we recognize player development benefits from having our USL team located at the same campus and playing in the same stadium as our first team, and changing the name to Union 2 appropriately reflects our player development pathway. The Lehigh Valley is a special place, incredibly thankful for our friends and fans and relationships we've forged. We will continue to make every effort possible to bring the Union brand to the region, end quote.
It's fair. I mean, I don't think there's much to complain about there. I think that's all legit, and that's kind of what they have to do. There's a huge benefit to having the teams training together. I don't know if it's a great fit for them, and I don't know their financials in terms of playing at Talon Energy Stadium, but I don't know if it's great for them to play their games at Talon Energy, but to be training together, yeah, that's vital, because we've seen it here in Atlanta with the ability to bring guys in and train with the first team. A player like Luis Fernando, who comes into the second team, turns heads, gets the attention of the first team staff. They bring him in to train. They like him. They sign him to an MLS deal. Those are the things you want. And it doesn't happen if you're separate. So teams that have it all under one roof have benefits that others don't. So that part makes complete sense to me. And again, I don't think it's right to keep the Steel branding if you're not playing in Lehigh Valley area.
And I believe, sir, we are caught up on the Twitters.
Well, that means it's time to go. So, John will not be with us tomorrow. He will be back on Monday.
Check.
You can still tweet at him at OSG Nelson. You can watch him on Georgia Public Broadcasting. Are you on all the games? Are you on the wraparound stuff? Like, how much are you doing over the next 2 days?
I'm Jim Nance for the next 2 days, doing all of the trophy presentations, halftime, in between show stuff with Hannah Gooden. Play-by-play is Matt Stewart, Larry Smith, Tommy Palmer, Sam Crenshaw's doing color. Wayne Gandy's doing color with Matt. Matt and Wayne are calling 4 of the 8 games this weekend. And we have special guest coach analysts Ed Dudley of Winder Barrow and Brian Lamar of Tucker. They will be on game 2 each day for us.
Are you going to come into the broadcast and say hello, friends, like Jim Nance?
Hello, friends. I believe that probably at some point as a work, I may do that. Probably late in the weekend when we're all punchy, there'll probably be a hello, friends.
Yeah, do it in like the middle game on Saturday, like one of the middle ones or something. That'll work.
So in between game 2 and game 3 Saturday afternoon, about 3:30 or so.
I'll be looking for that. I might have to get a clip.
Hello, friends. Yes.
Yeah,
hello,
I think
friends.
that's a definite.
Okay.
As I said, Jessica Charman will be chiming in on hour number 1 tomorrow. We're taking your requests for Friday flashback topics. Tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here. Poll will go up later today. You can vote, and we'll dig into that tomorrow, along with all the latest news and rumors and innuendos and all the stuff that will pop up over the next 24 hours. But thanks for spending your time with us. We'll be back tomorrow. Mucho plati, y'all.
Mucho plati.